Hey everyone, I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious. In the weeks after the Idaho student murders back in 2022, investigators arrested somebody that stopped pretty much all of us cold. It was a suspect that made no sense. A PhD student named Bryan Kohberger, guy from Pennsylvania. He was at the university next door and basically had zero connection that we knew about to the 4 innocent kids that were butchered. All of that is well known. But there's been a question ever since the authorities stormed his family's home in rural Pennsylvania, just a little over a month since the bloodbath at 1122 King Road. And that is, what did Bryan Kohberger's family know about him, if anything? And when did they know it, again, if they knew anything at all? Bryan was arrested that night in late December 2022, and for 3 long years, during which Kohberger confessed to killing those 4 kids, right, and was sentenced to life in prison. Kohberger's family faced a ton of suspicion and speculation that somehow they had known what had happened all along and that they kept their mouths shut. They even got compared to Brian Laundrie's parents. They did keep quiet in public throughout Brian's entire detention, as well as his guilty pleas and that sentencing. They stayed quiet. But now his older sister, Mel Kohberger, is speaking out. She did an interview with the New York Times, and in the interview, Mel Kohberger says that she and her mom and her dad and her sister Amanda were all dumbfounded and devastated to learn what the investigators suspected. And then, of course, what her brother eventually admitted to. Earlier on my NewsNation show, Banfield, I went over all of the revelations that Mel lined up in this interview with the New York Times. And then I talked to our senior national correspondent at NewsNation, Brian Enton. We talked about this jaw-dropping interview, right, that Mel Kohberger gave to the Times, especially the description of one moment in the Kohberger kitchen when Mel cut her finger and her brother Bryan Kohberger was repulsed by the sight of blood. Bryan Kohberger, repulsed by the sight of blood, one little cut on his sister's finger. What the hell is that about? I am going to play you this entire conversation in just a moment. And since Brian Enton was so invested and spent so much time out in Idaho, I was really looking forward to talking to him about this because I couldn't wait to dig into it. So much of it made sense and so much of it didn't. First, though, I just want to say a quick thank you to you for being here. You make this true crime podcast possible every single time you're here. So thank you. I also want to thank my sponsors because they also make this possible for me. And Masa Chips has joined my team. Yum. Here's what I love about Masa Chips, and you're going to love it too. Have you ever looked at the back of a typical bag of chips? It's insane. Half the ingredients are things I can't even pronounce, like seed oils and MSG and artificial dyes and those natural flavors that are absolutely not natural. So here's the deal. I am obsessed with Masa Chips. They're like chips that you would make on a farm. You know, the way food used to be before everything started coming out of a lab? They've just got 3 ingredients, just 3. Organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. That is it. And if you love masa, they got a sister brand called Vandy Crisps, potato chips with just 3 ingredients. And you're welcome. I'm going to give you 25% off your first order. Just use my code Banfield when you go to masachips.com or vandycrisps.com. Or you can click the link in the description or you can scan the QR code. And if you want them today, Masa and Vandy are now available in Sprouts, those stores nationwide. So grab a couple of bags before I get to them first. Pro tip, try the lime. They're awesome. Okay, back to the Kohberger family and the interview that was given to the New York Times by Bryan Kohberger's sister, Mel. Here is my conversation about it with Brian Enton. Bryan, I hung off of every single word in Mel's interview with the New York Times. And I have to say my heart breaks for this family because so many families are vilified. I think they have an expression for it. It's like, I have to find it. I wrote it down somewhere, but it's basically like they're just guilt by association. What were your thoughts when you read this interview?
Yeah, I know the reporter Mike Baker. He's an excellent reporter who interviewed Mel. And you're right. I mean, it's the first time we've heard anything from the Kohbergers throughout this entire process. We've seen them many times. We've tried to talk to them outside court. They've stayed totally silent. Obviously, I think they're still trying to be respectful to the system. And I noticed, I was thinking about a lot of the things that she wouldn't talk about clearly. She didn't ever really say whether she thought her brother was actually guilty, and she didn't want to talk about the court process, but it definitely gave us a glimpse inside how difficult this was for them too. And like you said, I mean, you have to remember with his sisters, with his family, obviously this really wasn't their fault, and in many ways they have been vilified.
What was super creepy was Mel's description of the conversations that the family was having that Christmas, right? He kills these kids, a couple weeks later crosses the country, comes home and spends a lovely Christmas with his family, during which time they're talking about the crime that happened back where he goes to school.
Right. Remember, he was home for Christmas break, so the whole family was there, and everybody in the world pretty much was talking about this case, apparently including them now, according to Mel. And she says she was concerned because Bryan Kohberger didn't lock his doors and was known to go out on these late night runs and drives, and was almost like worried about him because there was this killer on the loose. I guess little did she know it was actually her brother. But I want to read you a quote from the article she wrote. She said, "Bryan, you're running outside and this psycho killer is on the loose." She remembers telling him, "Be careful," and he thanked her for checking on him and assured her that he would stay safe, which is just so weird to think about that, in that moment, and, he's now admitted to the crimes, he knew that he was the one responsible, and yet was home and, telling his sister, "Yeah, I'll be careful." Very, very strange to think about.
I mean, listen, you and I have been at this rodeo enough times to know that when someone does something horrible, there's all this guilt by association. The family suffers. They're needled and prodded, and they're picked apart by, the internet. All sorts of false accusations are made. I think a book was even written. An Amazon book about the case came out with Melissa J. Kohberger as the author. Not true. She didn't. Yeah. She did not write a book. It's a fraud. And it's just, they could say so much about how hard it's been for them, but they don't. Mel says none of that because she said she recognizes how brutal this has been for the victims' family members, and that's why they stayed quiet, just to not traumatize these family members.
Yeah, and you could tell kind of reading between the lines of the article, I think she was probably trying to be careful, too, to not try to come across too much like they were victims or like her family was a victim. And there was one part that really stood out to me where she said that she, remembers the victims and honors the victims, and even said that in her phone, she has the victims' birthdays saved, so she remembers each victim on their own particular birthday, which stood out to me and just shows, that I guess the process that they've been going through too with dealing with this, knowing that it's their brother, that it's her brother, that it's their family member, that it's their son, but also remembering the victims too. And I'll tell you, I mean, seeing them in court, I obviously knew that they had feelings and that they were victims in a sense in all of this, but they didn't show that side in court so much. They never really looked over at the victims' families, or they never made any statements outside court. They never made any written statements. But now it's coming out that they felt pretty bad about this all along.
Well, and that heart that we all zoomed in on that was in front of Bryan Kohberger during the sentencing, it turns out Mel actually drew that heart for him just to remind him that he's loved by his family, which I understand. This is a family. You cannot imagine what they're going through. I do want to ask you about this very unusual moment. It's the only thing that sort of gets close to crime, and that is that Mel cut her finger on foil, like a foil wrap in the kitchen, and it was bloody. And Bryan made a comment about it. Describe what that was.
Yeah, remind me. I don't remember that part of the article. What did he say again, Ashleigh? Because I remember it was
weird.
When she was home, right, for during Christmas. She cut her finger.
Yeah.
And what did he say?
And he was like grossed out by the blood, and still helped her to bandage it. And all I kept thinking was like, you've just caused one of the biggest bloodbaths in true crime history, and there you are with your sister in a little tiny cut with blood, grossed out by it. I couldn't process that.
Yeah, and I'm remembering now she said that she was surprised he was helping her so much because he had been so grossed out by blood in the past, but still helped her in that moment, which, yeah, I mean, you're right. It's weird to think about when we know how gruesome the murders were and how many times he stabbed the victims and how bloody it was, that she's saying that he was, that he was grossed out by a cut from tinfoil. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around. It almost makes you wonder if he, had like almost two personalities in a way,
Yeah. Oh, I think so. I think that personality in the house that night is like none other that he's shown anyone else before. Bryan Anton, I was so looking forward to talking to you about this because I've just been like ruminating on this interview all day. Thank you for this. I appreciate it. And Happy New Year, my friend.
Thank you. And I missed you too. Yeah, with you were off. So I'm glad you're back.
So I found that really insightful. I think we've all been in the dark. It's why this case was so perplexing to us. It's why none of us could stop thinking about it. I mean, it's why we were obsessing. We still don't have the answers. We still don't know why he did it. We still don't know who he is, right? He's just sitting and rotting in a prison now for life without parole, but we still want answers. And it's because you and I want to know when someone like him is nearby, right? We want to protect ourselves. We're the flock. And we all make sense together. And then there's people like Kohberger who are way out here, right? Way outside the flock. And they look like us and they sound like us, but they're not like us. And they're coming for us. And that's the reason we want so badly to figure them out. And when we catch one of them, right? We want to dissect them. We want to do scientific experiments on them, right? Search their brains, figure out what is it? What made you do this, and how can we prevent ourselves from becoming your next victims, you people? You freakish people outside our flock, masquerading as us. Mel helped a little, right? She told us what she could. Her own family, they're in the flock, and they're perplexed by what the hell happened. But, there's Amanda. That's his other sister. She, too, told friends that she just couldn't believe what had happened. At first, she thought it was a prank when they were told that Bryan had been arrested. First thing was like, for what? Right? For what? So maybe Amanda will speak. I hope she'll speak with me. I've been trying to make contact with Amanda to talk to me about what that family's gone through and what their lives are now and what they know about this man, about their brother, their son. I can't imagine what it's like to be them. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you for listening and watching and being a part of this true crime community. As always, I'm Ashleigh Banfield. I will see you soon. And do remember, the truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.